Uncommon Marketing Matters is an interview series hosted through Uncommon Marketing Works that highlights the accomplishments and learn from failures of experts in the marketing world and how they achieve success through unique and creative tactics. Many marketers face that myth that anyone can do marketing, and I'm putting heavy quotes around anyone can do marketing. However, results-driven marketing is more complex than some may think. Uncommon Marketing Matters highlights these complexities and gives an inside look into what it takes to be an effective, successful, and innovative marketer. Hello, I'm DeFabio, the Growth Marketing Manager here at Uncommon Marketing Works. Let's dive into Uncommon Marketing Matters. It's DeFabio here, the Growth Marketing Manager for Uncommon Marketing Works, and it's that time again for another episode of Uncommon Marketing Matters. This afternoon, we are delighted to be speaking with Amy Foley. Amy is the co-founder at Inbound Back Office and is here to give us some marketing advice, tips and tricks, as well as share her experiences with us. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you as well, especially, from that the inbound back office angle. Inbound marketing is huge. That's where the industry is really at right now, instead of that outbound marketing technique. So it's great to have you here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
So to start out, tell us a little bit about Inbound Back Office, and how this kind of came about, because you're the co-founder, right? So why was there a need for Inbound Back Office, and then what your role really entails, and what a day in the life of Amy looks like when it comes to Inbound Back Office?
Yeah, so it started back in 2013. So I was working full-time from home, and doing a job that I wasn't super excited about. And I had gotten really efficient at working from home. That was before it was like a thing. And so I was able to, I had all this extra time on my hands and I had a lot of administrative skills. So I started reaching out to people who were looking for virtual assistants and saying, hey, I'm a virtual assistant. Do you want to work with me? And so the very first response I got was from an inbound marketing agency owner. And so I started working with him as just a virtual assistant. And I was doing things that were not necessarily related to the marketing, which was like calendar management and things like that. But then as we, built this relationship, he started introducing me to more of his team and having me help them on various things in marketing. And I started learning all about HubSpot and inbound marketing and how all of this worked and tied together. And I really started to realize that in that industry, there was definitely a need for this help, because a lot of the agencies are, pretty small. They don't necessarily have the resources to be able to hire all these full-time staff, but they still need the help. And so what I started doing was only working with marketing agency owners. And so I started building up my knowledge of the marketing industry and started hiring people to help me once I got overloaded so that they could help me help the agencies.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of snowballed from there. And in 2018, that original agency owner, Michael, and I decided to, make this like a big kid company, and we called it Inbound Back Office, and the rest is history. And now we have 80 employees.
That's amazing. I love how you call it a big kid company. That's funny.
Well, whenever I think about how it started, I'm like, I was just kind of freelancing, and it kind of feels like freelancing is kind of like the kid. And then, you get a bunch of clients and you're doing really well. And then you have like one VA who's helping you and you're like a teenager. And then you're a full blown company.
Yeah. And I know, so it's very similar to kind of our CEO and founder, Stacy's story, and her starting her own agency. And in a previous episode of Uncommon Marketing Matters, she talked about her experiences during COVID. But how was Inbound Back Office's experience these past 2 years of like COVID? And even, we're still in the middle of a pandemic right now. So how do you think like the last 2 years has kind of been for you guys?
Yeah. So initially it was really great for us because a lot of people had to start laying off their full-time staff, but they still
Right.
wanted to keep their businesses going. So they called on us to help them when they could, because we essentially give help. It's kind of, they only pay for what they use. So there's no like minimums or anything like that. So it's really easy to start and stop when you need to. And so they would come to us for help. And we actually did really great that first year. And then of course, last year with all of the, the hiring side was the hardest part for us because, we only employ part-time people. And so a lot of people were getting these full-time work from, like, nobody was working from home before. So this was a great opportunity for them, even though it was part-time. But now everybody's working from home and our folks are going, well, I could probably, make a salary and get, all of these, extra benefits that inbound back office can't offer, and still be able to work from home and probably make it so that I work the same amount of hours. And so why wouldn't you go there? Right. So we started losing a lot of people to that type of scenario. And then we found that hiring and retaining people was really challenging. And so we ended up having to, raise our wages across the board, which made it, even tighter, but we got through. And I think we finally got over the hump, into the winter last year. And now everything seems to be evening out a little bit.
Yeah, there definitely has been a shift, I feel like, in remote work. Everybody, it's almost like when you're applying somewhere and it's like, oh, you're not remote. Like now, I feel like it's a complete opposite. Like before, everyone was so worried about remote work because it was like, how am I supposed to keep tabs on my employees? Are they actually working when they're saying they're working? How are they supposed to communicate with everybody who's at the physical branch location of my business? But now it's almost the complete opposite. Like if you don't offer remote work, it's weird. Like people are like, oh, I'm not coming into a physical location.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because like I got my first remote job back in, 2012. And I mean, that was before I didn't even know how to do it. I was like, we're just going to figure this out. But after that, I was like, there's no way you could pay me to go back into an office after this. Like, this is amazing. And I even had two like tiny kids at home. And even with that, I mean, I always say, choose your hard. Even with that, I would still choose that way over going into an office for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And in saying that, like everybody's going remote, which makes our experiences more digital, right? Are you seeing a shift with the clients that you're working with and the marketing strategies that you're implementing, especially through HubSpot, in kind of these marketing tactics, like where everything's going, considering that people are even more digital because of the pandemic too?
Yeah, I do see that. I see, some clients. So we typically work with a lot of HubSpot agencies anyway, and inbound marketing who are mostly all digital, but we do have a handful of clients who also incorporated some of the, the quote unquote old fashioned, the old school type of traditional marketing. And I do see them kind of putting a lot less money and effort into those avenues and more into digital for sure.
Right. And it seems like, digital has just been up and coming. It's getting cheaper, honestly, than, like the physical pieces of marketing, like a print ad or a billboard or a TV commercial. Those get so expensive now. And digital, you can kind of target your audience a little bit better and it's cheaper for you too. So it's great for like that bottom line budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot easier to be able to test too. Like I think a lot of agencies would love the opportunity to be able to test different ideas, but that's not easy to do in the traditional marketing world.
Right. So out of all the things that you've done as you've grown in through your marketing journey, because we've already kind of talked about like how you got your start and how inbound back office became what it is now, what do you find that when you're working with your clients, or maybe it's just like things that you're doing for your own personal inbound back office marketing tactics, what are you the most passionate about when you're working through problems, scenarios, your day-to-day tasks?
So for me, it's mostly about building the relationships with the clients. That is kind of where my strengths have lied in the last couple of years, I would say. So Michael and I have built the infrastructure so that we are not involved really in day-to-day operations, hardly at all. We've kind of made it so that we are more in a mentorship type of role at this point. So we focus on the things that we really enjoy and our strengths. And one of mine is kind of building those relationships. So I do a lot of that through LinkedIn, and do a lot of community building on LinkedIn. And it's definitely been really helpful to inbound back office because, you can support your own clients and you can support agencies that you want to be clients. And then eventually then they start to know you and like you and trust you. And then when they actually have a need for your services, then they come out. And also building those relationships through our podcast where I interview agency owners. So just, having them on the show introduces them to inbound back office. And then we get to have a conversation where we get to know each other. And then, it leads to a lot of times them inquiring about inbound back office and saying, oh, hey, this is really something I could use. And then, eventually becoming a client. So just really building those relationships is what I really like to do.
Yeah, we use LinkedIn for our own marketing efforts too, to kind of do the same thing, build those relationships. And it's so interesting. I prior to this position, I was the director of communications and marketing for a local nonprofit. And it's so interesting because as I was in that position, you don't know what you don't know. So when people are coming up to you and they're saying that all of these things are going to help your bottom line, to help your marketing strategy be a little bit more efficient, sometimes you're hesitant in those items. So I think LinkedIn is a really cool tool to, instead of just be like this cold calling sales pitch, calling you and leaving you a voicemail on your answering machine, along with like 30 other people who did the same exact thing. LinkedIn's a really good opportunity to build those relationships, exactly as you said. Get the in and show the value of what, inbound back office really can do. And then it's amazing because once you start talking to people, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I possibly needed this help. I didn't know that this was an option. So it's really cool to bring those things to light as well. And, like I said, help make marketing processes more efficient and streamline those.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I'm a huge LinkedIn advocate. People think it's hilarious, but I'm like, it works. It really works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then you're growing the business as well through, pretty much through LinkedIn, if that's how you're building your connections. And as you're meeting all these clients, talking to all these HubSpot marketing agencies that are working with their own clients as well, do you hear any stereotypes, being in the marketing field and working with all these clients that you're like, and when I think of a marketing stereotype, something that probably all marketers are going to face at some point in their career, this is what I think of?
Yeah, so it's funny. My husband used to work in advertising, and when I met him, he used to laugh at this quote, and he would say, "If you can't convince them, confuse them." And that is kind of like the stereotype that we think of when we think of marketing, because and then when I think of that quote, I think of like a pharmaceutical ad that you see on TV where it's
right.
Oh, if you just take this drug, your life is going to be amazing all the time. And, here in the background, we're going to tell you all the terrible things, but you'll never see that in the ad. And so I think that a lot of times people think of marketers as, just trying to pull one over on them to try to make a sale. And that's not been my experience at all in the agencies that I've worked with, probably because I've worked on building those relationships, and we kind of pick and choose who we work with. And at this point, we will turn down people if they are not a good fit for us. We don't want to work with those kinds of people. So we've kind of built our own kind of ecosystem that doesn't even involve any of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even from the consumer level, there's always this discussion of being a smart consumer. What products are you buying? Where are these products coming from? And you can do that from the B2B side as well. Agencies, when we get an inquiry or we get a lead, we can to pick and choose who we want to work with as well, and how that's going to reflect on our brand and our company. So it's very interesting to see that you're doing the same exact thing. Especially, that stereotype is a stereotype for a reason. Stereotypes don't just come out of thin air and get created for nothing. So anything that, when we're talking about marketing, and I love that. If you can't convince them, confuse them.
Yes. We say it all the time.
Yes. That it's like, oh, okay, that's definitely the stereotype, that it's like, just sell the product and do whatever you possibly can to sell it. And if that's what works, then that's what we're going to roll with. That's so funny.
Yes.
So throughout your time at Inbound Back Office, and even before Inbound Back Office was official, what are some of the biggest marketing challenges that you've faced along the way? And can you give us an example or a certain situation, scenario, and how you handled that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest challenge that I've had in the industry in general is really finding good talent. And I know obviously the industry has that problem because that's why we exist.
Right.
Which if I had thought about it ahead of time, I would have realized that, somebody else probably would have created this company if talent were super easy to find. So I kind of walked into that one, but yeah, we have noticed. I used to do all the hiring for Inbound Back Office, and it was like, that was a full-time job right there. Especially in the beginning. It was just like a never-ending cycle of trying to weed out people who just, didn't have the skills that they said they did, or wouldn't be a good fit for working remote at the time. And like, it was just, and then people would ghost us, and, then you have to start all over again. And it was just, that is probably the biggest challenge that we found. Now we've kind of honed our process in that, I would no longer go through I would ask questions in the job description and ask for responses to be written out in a cover letter. And so if there was no cover letter, they didn't even get my attention. I weeded them out. And then, if they had a cover letter and they didn't answer the question, goodbye, they can't follow instructions, and they probably didn't even read the full job description.
Right.
And then from there, like if I saw somebody that I really liked on paper, then I would send them this questionnaire where I was asking like specific questions about that particular position. So for example, if it was like digital ads, I might ask a specific question about creating a digital ad, or something that they would have to know what they were doing in order to answer it. And then other questions that would kind of help me gauge what their, long-term goals were, if they were going to leave us in a month for a full-time job. You kind of get good at figuring out the patterns of people who end up leaving or end up not working out, and asking those questions. And then only if they get through that questionnaire and I still want to talk to them is when they finally get an interview. So that's kind of how we've honed our process over the time, so that we don't waste our time talking to people who just aren't going to work out. It does take a lot longer to do it that way, as far as like from the time you post a job to the time you get to hire somebody, because you're not going through as many people, but you get much more quality that way.
Right. Yeah. And as you're like going through these experiences, filtering through all these questionnaires and these resumes, and you're going through interviews, what is like, are there any common characteristics from the people who have been successful working at Inbound Back Office, their performances that you've really been pleased with, that you're like, I know that if someone walks in to the interview and they have these types of personality characteristics or this kind of experience, they're going to be successful in the marketing field?
Yeah, I would say so. I know as far as our business model goes, we used to have a lot of success with stay-at-home moms, because they were just looking for part-time work. They were looking for a little extra income, but nothing specific, so they could help their family, but they were really looking for that flexibility, which is something that we definitely offer. But now that everybody's working from home and everybody thinks that they, can work from home and do 5 other full-time jobs. It's gotten a little harder, and stay-at-home moms are all getting full-time jobs, working from home as well. So some of the characteristics I would say are like, a lot of times freelancers are really good because they already have experience, with working with multiple clients, which is something they would do here, and working from home, and, holding yourself accountable, which is something in the virtual world we really have to rely on, and our clients rely on that too. But also, if they have, like, for example, the HubSpot specifically, if they have previous certifications, that tells us that they know the tool, at least up to the level of certification they have, or they've worked for, a marketing agency before. That's always helpful. Now, it's not as helpful if they've worked for like a huge one, because it's going to be much different working for like, for us who works with mostly smaller to medium-sized agencies. But, having that marketing background is super key. And, just being able to be flexible, and being a self-starter, and being able to find answers to questions. This is one thing that I always prided myself on when I was first starting, was that anytime a client said, "Can you do X?" and I had never heard of that, all it takes is a quick Google search to figure out what it is, and, how hard it would be for me to figure it out, and of course, if I have to figure something out, like I tell them, "Hey, I've never done this, but I can learn it in, an hour. I'm not going to charge you for that, because of course that's going to help me with other clients in the future. So I'll spend an hour learning it, and then I can do it for you, but I'm not going to be an expert yet." But, you tell them that you can't do it yet, but you're going to learn, and they're usually really happy to have you do that. So like finding those answers on your own without constantly having to ask for help is super helpful, I think, in marketing in general, honestly, because the industry changes so much, so often, and so fast that, I mean, you have to be able to go out and find those answers as they are today.
Yeah. And that's like such a valuable tool, a valuable piece of advice, because when you think about an agency that you're working with and you've already built those relationships, like we said, through LinkedIn, you've gotten the meeting with the client, here you are, you're finally working with them. They've signed on with you, they signed that contract, or whatever the process is. And if they're asking later on down the road, "Can you do this too?" If your answer was no, it's unfortunate, because it's like that relationship that you just built, now they have to go and try to find someone else and build the same thing with someone else. Whereas if you have that go-getter, that self-knowledge, that determination, and that resilience to say, "We don't know, but give us a day and we will," it's nice, because you get to just strengthen that relationship a little bit more, and also, retain them into like further business that you're doing with them.
Yep, absolutely, 110%. And if they go and find that thing somewhere else, they might see that that other place can do all of the other things too that you've been doing, and they might decide just to, go there instead, because, they can get it all in one place.
Yeah. Yeah. So in saying that, with marketing in general, being an agency that offers so many different types of services, are there specific marketing trends, outside of the remote work, but specifically with, inbound marketing? Are there some marketing trends that you're seeing repeat themselves over and over in the industry, or something that's, you're like, "Oh, this is new. A lot of people are discussing this, and this is definitely something we should be keeping our eye on, and an up and coming topic or trend"?
Yeah. So honestly, I feel like a lot of people are going to that relationship building type of model. I've seen that a lot. I've seen a lot of people talking about that on LinkedIn, and other places where, they're still doing spending on ads and things like that, but they're doing a lot of, spending a lot of time building those relationships. And a lot of the CEOs and, company owners are creating like a like their own personal brand, so that they can be known as a thought leader on XYZ, or like on running an agency or running a business. And then that kind of trickles down as well, because, obviously they're building their personal brand for, being able to go out and speak and things like that. But they're also talking a lot about their agency and directing a lot of traffic to there as well. So I've seen those two kinds of things really emerging. And that's where it seems that they're spending a lot of their time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's great. And I think that's something that, being in the marketing agency and being self-starters too, with just that little piece of advice, like you said, you're seeing people talk about it, whether that be on LinkedIn or messaging forums or anything where, marketing professionals are giving other marketing professionals advice. It's great for anyone starting out in their career to kind of know, like, the industry develops so quickly that you have to continually check in, just like you were already saying, Amy. If you have to continually find the answers on your own and make sure you're keeping abreast of topics and trends. And the best way to do that is kind of what we're doing with this podcast, right? Is just talking to other marketing professionals who are also seeing some things and discussing how are they working, how are they not.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, I'm seeing it more and more. And it's more like a strategy over tactics kind of thing, which I hear talked about a lot, where, it used to be just like, do this, do these three things and your marketing will soar, or something like that. I'm seeing people go back to like overall strategies and seeing how building a personal brand over the long term, it's more like longer term things than quick wins, is what I think we're going to now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people, they were, even like in the last 5 years, it was always marketing was kind of seen as something that I don't want to say it was less important than other things. If you were in an internal marketing department or even a marketing agency working for a B2C or B2B company, marketing was kind of, if there were budget cuts, that always happened with marketing first, because they were kind of seen as this like overhead cost. And now, because we're going, that industry trend is starting to focus more on the long term. I think a lot of people are really getting the importance of marketing, and the fact that, you can't just implement an SEO practice and see results 1 week later. Like the things that are going to have a lasting impact in your marketing tactics and strategies and give you a higher return on investment in the long run are just, as you said, those things that last longer. It may take a little bit longer to implement, but their return on investment over a longer period of time is greater.
Yeah, for sure. We actually saw that happen at the beginning of the pandemic a lot. Some of our agency clients came to us and said, hey, our clients are starting to cut their marketing budgets because they need to cut costs. And it's like, no, that is the wrong thing to do. And then they come back, later in the year, and they realize all that traction that they lost because they cut their marketing budgets. And I think they learned some valuable lessons doing that. But the ones that kept their marketing budgets intact are the ones who really came out on top, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. We definitely saw that as well. So then in our last question for you today, which is what I personally always find the most interesting, I'm not sure how our listeners feel, but it's the part that I enjoy the most. What is one piece of advice that you could give to any marketer growing in their careers, maybe entering, or some mid-level marketers who are looking to develop their skills, their knowledge, get into the next step in their career?
I would say always stay curious. There's always somebody out there who thinks they have all the answers. But in my experience, there's no one right or wrong way to do things, especially in marketing. And so it's really advantageous to stay curious about everything that you're learning, and everything, not everything's going to make sense to you, and maybe that's for good reason. And so just stay curious and, just be a sponge, learn as much as possible. And of course, build those relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. We really had a great time, talking to you and picking your brain. It's wonderful having your advice, and I'm sure so many people listening to this podcast will benefit from it as well.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Amber. This was so much fun.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Until next week, we'll talk to you again on another episode of Uncommon Marketing Matters.